Welcome to You Are History, Ohio Edition, a captivating series of interviews that spotlight the influential voices and impactful stories of Black leaders hailing from the vibrant state of Ohio. In this exclusive series, we delve into the lives, achievements, and experiences of trailblazing individuals who leave an indelible mark on their communities and beyond. Through engaging conversations and profound insights, we uncover these exceptional Ohio-based influencers' unique perspectives, challenges, and triumphs, showcasing the dynamic contributions of Black excellence in the Buckeye State. Join us on this enlightening journey as we honor these remarkable individuals' legacy, resilience, and innovation, affirming that in Ohio, as in the broader tapestry of history, they are not just making history, they are history. Don't forget to like, share, and comment where you're watching.
Today I have with me a friend of mine, and we have been friends to family. I call her Mom Aunt, and it has been that way the majority of my life.
And I call your mom Aunt.
And so when you have friends and you're raised in a community where your family's friends become your relatives, that's a community that we were raised in.
Mm-hmm.
So I look at Aunt Jet, and she is still moving ahead. How old is she now?
92, she'll be 93 in August.
And her name is Jet Gordon.
Juanita Gordon.
Is that a real name?
Yeah, her real name is Juanita, but you one of the babies from the family, so you got to call her out Jet.
So her name is Juanita, and she has how many children?
6.
You want to name them?
Yes. I'll go from oldest to youngest. Oldest
Okay.
is Viola Gordon Ronseville, Andrew William Gordon, Gerald Allen Gordon, Gerald Wayne Gordon, Evelyn Lorraine Gordon, and Deborah Marie Gordon-Benton.
And you are the baby.
I'm the baby.
So, baby Deborah Benton, what was it like being raised in that household coming up? And are you from Youngstown?
Yeah.
Are you from Ohio?
Yep, from Youngstown, Ohio. Born at St. Elizabeth Hospital, like so many others.
So what was it like being raised at that time in your home, in your community?
Okay, so first of all, when I was born into a household of 5 families. You know, back in the day, like your grandparents might have a house, and then all their kids, when they got married, they'd all stay in the same house, and that's how we were. And actually, it was wonderful because there was no such thing as ever being home alone. There were no latchkey kids. There were always adults in the house, and it was wonderful. And I actually describe it as, until I was 8 years old, that was where I lived, at my grandmother's house on Rigby Street with all the other families. The Clartys lived there, the Armsteads, it was just wonderful. And then I tell people that my parents decided they wanted to be grown and move out on their own. And everything changed. When we first moved, we moved into Victory Projects, and that was just a whole different culture.
Wait a minute, hold on. Well, slow down. Wait a minute, hold on. Victory Projects on the east side?
On the east side, we lived at 641 Magnolia Avenue.
Wow.
Yeah. We lived
And
there.
where were you going to school at that time?
So let's see, started off at Lincoln Elementary, and then I stayed at Lincoln as long as I could, and then I went to Madison, and then from Madison, we moved after a few years in Victory, and then we moved over to the Sharon Line, and
Okay.
so I ended up going to Science Hill and North for a little while, and then while my parents were finishing, because they were building a house out on the Sharon Line, and while the house was being finished, we lived with my dad's sister, and we stayed there until the house got finished, and then we moved to Liberty Road, which is our family home now. My mom still resides there.
So your mom is still out on the Sharon Line?
Yeah, mom's still on the Sharon Line. And the interesting thing there was the charities. You know, this is my mom and her best friend, Laura Charity. They've been best friends. They're both 92. They've been best friends since they were 5 years old. They had many of their kids together, and they worked together. They both worked at the phone company together. They both went to nursing school together and worked in the hospital together. They both retired from the phone company, and they both built houses right around the corner from each other. So um, that was back in the day. And
It's
those two
funny.
ladies are still doing great.
It's funny how friendships have changed because I know a lot of people that are much our senior.
Hmm.
Their friendships with their girlfriends and their friends were lifelong.
Yeah.
Highs and lows, ups and downs, ins and outs, but they have lifelong relationships.
And
More so
I
than what
so
we
envy
do.
that. I so envy that.
I mean, they're like sisters. They're
Yeah.
better than sisters.
Hmm.
And I don't know how we got away from that.
I don't know. I guess, there's a lot of pros to the opportunities that came along. And I guess with our communities, the difference was, if you were in Youngstown and you were of the majority community, that didn't mean you had to go someplace else. There's always been opportunities here. But for us, we had to go someplace else. If you're from the Mahoning Valley and you look like us, especially during those years, in order to have opportunity, you had to go someplace. And that meant leaving your roots. And so, as a matter of fact, I can trace back to the early 70s when more of our boys in particular started getting athletic scholarships. And most of them who got those scholarships never came back here, especially the ones who did well, very few of them returned.
Well, remember, a lot of things changed that made it to where you couldn't come back. Because remember, the steel mill shut down.
Yeah.
So even if you went away, there was nothing to come back to
That's
because
what I'm
everything
saying.
had
The lack of
exited.
opportunities. It's just a tremendous lack of opportunity.
So now, so you graduated from which school?
I graduated from East High School, but I do want to go back to something that's really significant in my childhood. So you were asking about my growing up. So I lived in
Yes.
a household with all these folks, but I had a very entrepreneurially minded dad. And my dad came from the South. He could not read, he couldn't write, and he only had one arm. But he was a man who dreamed big dreams. He was a visionary. And so even though, you know, those things that he didn't or couldn't do, in spite of that, he owned a riding stable. I think you remember the riding stable.
Yeah.
He had a riding stable. He was the first Black Gulf franchise owner in the city. He had 2 Gulf gas stations. Um, he had so many businesses. He did so many entrepreneurial and productive things. Even until he passed away, he started a lawn business and he hired a whole bunch of teenage boys, and he bought a whole bunch of lawnmowers, and he was running a lawn service until he passed. Um, and I came up under a father who we were not allowed to say we couldn't do something. If he told you to do something, if you said you couldn't do it, that meant he lied, because he told you to do it. That means you could. And so you didn't challenge dad. If you thought you couldn't do it, you figured out a way. And that kind of mantra stays with me today. And so I was blessed in so many ways growing up.
So now you went to Youngstown City Schools, looks like.
Yeah, went to Youngstown City School,
So
graduated.
you were part of the city when they had the city series.
City Series.
Right, with athletics. You were a part when the school when you had North, East, South, Rand,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wilson. You
Yeah,
had I mean
yeah,
Youngstown
I was
was
very involved in sports. So
I mean, but you were entertainer. I mean, so you guys had the talent shows
yes, we had the talent shows.
because I remember the talent shows that used to be over at the South Field House.
And that was the big place for the talent shows. But you had so many people, like there was groups all over the place, trios and duets and bands. I can't even remember all the bands that we had, and most of them were really, really good. There was just plenty of opportunity if you were engaged in entertainment. If you were willing to get out there and show your chops, people were supportive.
So so I look at America's Got Talent, and I'm going to go into who Deborah Benton is. America's Got Talent is a big snapshot of what we used to do here in the inside of the Black community.
Okay.
We,
Yeah.
I mean, we've been doing talent shows. That's all it is.
Mhm. Yep. It's just
And
a larger scale with a whole lot of money behind it.
that's correct. And then I look at Valley Gold,
Mhm.
and I'm jumping ahead, and we got to go back to how we got to Valley Gold. But it is what you do, and you're an entertainer. You like the entertainment business. You've been a part of it. You're a communicator, a broadcaster, a journalist, and you have laid foundation for it. But when you look back at Don Cornelius,
Mhm.
everyone in the Black community at 11 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon was watching one television program.
Yes. The Soul Train.
The talent that we had. There was the world that we're in today as far as entertainment and music is because of that foundation.
Mhm.
But it seems as though it's slipping through our hands, and the young people don't have access to portray and or even to experiment any longer with the creative arts.
Well, one of the big problems with that is they swapped out programming, and I have to say it that way because instead of maintaining the arts, especially when you're talking about communities of color, specifically African American people who are highly creative. So you remove the arts from the curriculum and you replace it with anti-drug and anti-violence programs. My problem with that was always, if you are filling kids' hands and heads with the great things that they are and can be, they're not going to be doing the drugs and the violent things. But if the only message they're hearing has the word violence and drugs in it, meanwhile, the things that resonated with them, those gifts that are in them that should be cultivated, you're removing those elements. When I was in school in elementary, they actually used to give piano lessons. I remember my sister taking violin lessons and my brothers taking drum and clarinet lessons. Well, of course, by the time I started matriculating a little bit higher in grades, those programs were eliminated. All of a sudden, there wasn't enough money for them, but we could always find plenty of grant money about drugs and violence. And so, consequently, by the time I graduated, which was in the 70s, there were clerical programs, and there was machine shop programs and wood shop programs, and there was the academic programs. But what about those programs that spoke to the gifts that were already in students, as it relates to talent and talent, entertainment talent, which is, and when you think about it, with the exception of your health, the highest price you pay for in anything is some form of art, whether it's the house you live in, whether it's the paintings on your walls, the instruments, or the tickets that you pay for to go to a resort or a vacation. That's art and entertainment in some form. And yet those very lucrative career opportunities were basically stripped from our schools.
I say it, Dr. Albright,
Mm-hmm.
he and I would have conversations, and he said, before you can sit in a chair, you have to design it.
Exactly.
And you have to draw the chair out
Mm-hmm.
before you can you have to see it.
Yep.
And even if you're not an artist, I find that where crafts and the music and the numbers and the rhythm, it helps you along the way in your socialization as well as in your culture as you move through life, even with business.
Yep.
And when I look at history, and it's so rich in our community when it comes to creative arts, we are blessed with gifts.
Yep. Immensely.
And now they seem to have been stifled a little bit. and we don't put the money behind it that we need to elevate it so young people can find alternative means, as you said.
Well, you know, and what you see a lot of, like you mentioned, America's Got Talent and American Idol, those type of shows. If you look at them, especially in their earlier forms, what you saw was it was undeniable the music that was being studied by the artists that would come onto the stages and perform. Everybody was studying Whitney and studying the Temptations and studying Stevie Wonder and studying Aretha, all of these great African artists. And now you're seeing fewer and fewer African people in the talent lineups. But that music is the music that those are the shoulders that most of those artists are standing on. So, you know, it's something, things have to change, and we have to be about whatever we can do on whatever level we're on to help make those changes happen. Otherwise, you know, it's kind of like you'll turn on a Motown, or say a couple generations from now, will play Motown music and never really know that it was people that look like you and me that created it.
That is such a deep statement.
But I mean, you think about it. You know, they already tested the water a few years ago when they wanted to make Justin Timberlake the face for the Motown Awards, and people pushed against it. But what you have to know is, anytime something is introduced, it's not going
Over.
It's not going away. They'll test the water, just like when it came to what is it? Things that we hate, like you make a phone call and you got to go through press 1 for this, press 2 for that. When that first started, people said that's never going to fly. Those businesses are going to go out of business if they're using those automated voice prompts. And what happened? We just became accustomed to it. Things don't go away. They find a way of getting us used to it.
Cultivation. You know, I look at us as a plants inside of gardens.
Okay.
And we're supposed to cultivate and pollinize and support one another.
Mm-hmm.
And in the entertainment industry, it is a very unusual business, because you have to break in, and then you have to cut through, and then you have to fight to stay.
Yeah.
and you are getting pulled from all areas that people don't realize. So they look at this great celebrity that people achieve, but the road to control your own narrative is very, very difficult. If you're very, very talented and you're willing to give your talent up to someone else for them to use for them, it's easier for you to get in. And the reason why I'm saying this, I'm talking about Cat Williams.
Okay.
If you're willing to compromise, it's an easier path going forward. If you're amenable and you don't, if you read what's on the script, but if you want to own it, you want to control it, and you want to navigate it, they make it very, very hard for you to break through.
So here's I know this is probably going to sound a little altruistic and in some regards just not realistic. You use the word ownership. And if we back up and not think in terms of owning an organization or a corporation, but if you roll it all the way back to the nucleus and determine you want to own yourself. If you start there and you are definite about who you are, the message that you want to portray, the type of brand that you want to exhibit, and where you want to go, that's going to make a lot of decisions for you in the beginning so that you don't fall into so many pitfalls that so many have. So, and the reason I said this is going to sound kind of unrealistic, there's certain things that you can only know as you grow, as you mature. I look at myself, for example, I'm singing now. When I started off as a kid, teenager, I sang all the time. I used to do concerts around town and some out of town, but I had a dream, of, I want to be a big singer, but that was pretty much the extent of it. There was no definition to my dream. I didn't know, I didn't have management. I didn't have mentors. I didn't have any of those. I didn't have anybody talking to me, explaining the business to me. And so over time, as life began to life, or, how we say life is lifing, over time, I lost sight of that dream in deference to just responsibilities and demands. And I can honestly say now I've broken back into singing, and I'm excited about how things are going. And I have to say, I'm grateful that I didn't become a star early on, because I don't know where I would be. I don't know. I've never had a desire to do drugs. I've never been one to fall into whatever the crowd is doing. I've never been one to really submit to peer pressure for whatever reasons. I've just never been that person. But I also know that I had plenty of insecurities. And so I don't know where my weaknesses would have been, so that now this time in my life where I'm able to step into this industry, knowing who I am, being confident and owning my own person, and having standards and knowing what things I'm willing to do and what things I'm not willing to do. But had this happened earlier in my life, I don't know. I don't know. Would I be strung out on drugs? Would I, be on Skid Row? I don't know. Would I have, been used by the different people and end up being part of the Me Too movement? I don't know. And so all I can say is, in reference to just the trend of things and the myriad of things that can happen and take place in a person's career while they're trying to navigate these entertainment waters and trying to break in, you got to have a good sense of self, and you have to have some really arduous standards, so that when you get to where you're going, or as you are moving along that path, you can enjoy your journey. Where there's certain things you can compromise on, as long as you're not compromising yourself. Well, I really like to sing this style of music. They want me to sing a little bit more of that. Those are things that you can negotiate. But messages, that's another thing. Like, there's certain kind of songs and certain messages and certain kinds of lyrics I just will not do. And I'm okay with that, because if that's somebody else's thing, more power to them. And the other part of that is, there's so many wonderful, wonderful, beautiful songs inside that spectrum that I'm willing to traverse through. There's no shortage of good material. So,
And I say that because I've watched you, and as I said, I've watched you be a great publicist.
Thanks, Tracy.
I've watched you be a marketer. I've watched you, because everybody has different lives that we go through as we grow up. And then I've watched you produce shows. And I see where, if we own our own medium,
yeah,
we can control our own messaging. But now we don't control the medium or the message. And we wonder why we're getting it all wrong, because it's coming from a different source.
Yeah, and you hear many, many, many rap artists. I mean, it's numerable now. How many will tell you that the good messaging, and even rap's origins, was positive messaging, empowering messaging, and the powers that be, like you said, when you don't own something, the powers that be, they came in and said, we won't promote you doing that, but we will promote you doing this. If you talk
Correct.
about, if you call Black women by anything other than their name, if you talk about killing your brother, if you're proliferating the idea of shooting each other, we'll support all of that. But messages like that are songs that, excuse me, like what Marvin Gaye sings about, and so many artists who just have a pure sense of creating art that's going to uplift the culture, so to speak. Well, sometimes it's hard to find support dollars. And you mentioned my show. I just had to be okay with, for the most part, my husband and me funding it. We've had a couple other advertisers who've come along and who've been with us. But in terms of the kind of resources, and you already know what kind of money it takes, the kind of resources that it takes to really build a TV platform, I had to be okay with maybe not being able to carry that vision through and just doing it on a certain level and hoping that those who can be inspired by the guests that we bring on would be inspired. Because if I'm owning it, you've seen the show, there's certain kinds of content I don't do gossip, and I'm not criticizing anybody who does.
But I'm not bringing nobody down.
Right, everybody has their own whatever. At the end of the day, when you watch my show, I want you to be highly entertained, but I also want you to come away with hearing the story of someone that you may look up to. There may be a celebrity, they may have accomplished something, and you hear their story and you find out, oh, it wasn't all a bed of roses. Oh, they had some real challenges and some real struggles. So if they can go through that and still stick with it, then I can too. That's the point. So, I had to, when I first started the show, I'm thinking this is, it's going to be positive, it's going to be uplifting, it's highly entertaining. I've got all these celebrities who are willing to come to Youngstown, Ohio, and appear live, and all of this. And I just knew I was going to have sponsors through the wazoo. And I found out, nope. So many of them said to me, point blank to my face, go ask the Black people. And yeah, and with that, I'll never forget, I sat in the headquarters of the Democratic chairperson. So it's a few years ago. Had an appointment to discuss advertising on my show. The election is coming up, and I knew that the TV stations are pressed for additional airtime because their time gets bought up. Well, here I got a weekly half-hour show, and I had an appointment, and I'll never forget, the man pulled out a list of Black people and told me, go ask them. And that wasn't the only time I experienced that, but it was just very telling. And I had to realize, okay, first of all, you don't see a lot of Black-owned businesses being advertised on TV because a lot of them just don't have the resources to run TV ads on a regular basis. But there are a lot of businesses that advertise regularly. And so the general school of thought is, so you go to some that are already advertising because you're going to be reaching a segment of the market that they want to sell their products to. And so, that should work out as a good fit, some opportunity there. And I was quickly schooled, I'll say it that way. But, and so I had to be okay with realizing, okay, you may be in this alone. And I'll tell you what, it's been difficult. The challenges have been often feeling insurmountable. But you know me, Trace. I trust God. And the bottom line is, or at the end of the day, I can't tell you the thousands of people who have let me know that Vally Gold with Deborah has made a difference in their lives, a difference in the lives of grandkids. I've got letters from people in prison who shared with me what the show has meant to them. I've gotten letters from grandmothers who have told me they sat down all their grandkids and made them watch a particular episode because of the history information that was given there by the people who were making the history. So, while it has not materialized financially, it's made an impact, and that's what it's about.
I have a question before I let you go. We've got to come back and do this again. What's happening is I only have a certain space of time, and I hope the people will listen and watch and engage in this because we are history.
Yeah.
We don't look at ourselves as history, but a lot of people don't know the obstacles that we've overcome and what we've been through.
Because you know what? You got to show up and smile. And when somebody turns on the TV for entertainment, they don't want to hear your problems. You promise to give them entertainment. They need an escape too. And so, that's the symbiotic relationship that you have as a host and your audience.
Question for you, and I'm gonna. How in the world did we allow our men to call us bees and hoes? And even to this day, and now it's more prolific than before.
Oh.
And it's still, and I mean, it's really, really, really offensive to me.
It's incredibly offensive to me. I know a lot of people who use profanity, and I realize it is in the culture to stay, but I never intend to get accustomed to it. And nobody better ever call me any of those things, at least in my hearing, because I don't know, old school. But the other thing I will say is this. I can remember when other people started infiltrating our families in this regard. I'll use this example. You know what we were taught as young girls coming up, things that you do and things that you do not do with your body before marriage. And then in our school system, they brought in Planned Parenthood, did not get it approved by parents, and they started having these meetings. They would come into the school, and I'm talking about what I know because I witnessed it. And they would start at 9th and 10th grade. Someone would come from Planned Parenthood, and they espoused a whole different set of morals than what we were being taught at home. They bring in their back a little package of tricks. They would show us different contraceptive means and say, if you love him and you think he loves you, I remember this speech, it's okay to do this. Just make sure you have protection. Well, so somebody else is now impacting our morals. And now that you've impacted this on how we procreate, then you also you bring in other stuff, the language. You remember how there was no such thing as our kids falling out having tantrums.
What? What?
You understand? And as we begin to broaden our base of influence, we started taking on character or characteristics that were not our own. There is no such thing as me looking at an elderly person and showing them any disrespect. Like if I see somebody that's, and I'm getting up in age, but still, if I see somebody that's older than me, I'm holding the door for them.
I stand up and get on my chair.
Okay, yes, all of those things. But when you start taking on or allowing other people to have influence that don't have the same standards that you do, these are the kinds of things that begin to happen. I can remember seeing kids cuss at their parents, and I'd be like, whoa, let me check. I still got all my teeth, because that would never happen. And here's the other thing. The younger people are who are having babies, the less or the fewer tools many of them have to bring up these kids. And so when you start, you throw out contraceptives and tell people, just pick the one you want. That's like giving a loaded gun to a 3-year-old. So you're telling them, okay, use protection, but that's not the message. The message is, I can go ahead and do this. And so the younger people are who are, when you got 13, 14-year-old kids having babies, where they really should they should be trying out for cheerleading, and they should be figuring out, how they want to wear their hair and which girls are the mean girls, things like that, kid stuff. Instead, they're raising kids.
Growing up too fast
because they have to. And they don't have the kind of tools necessarily that say, okay, this is how you respond to adults. This is how you behave in front of adults. This is the kind of language you use, because they're kids themselves. And so this is where we are.
What is a takeaway that you want people to know about Deborah Benton
Ah,
for Black History Month?
for Black History Month, I want them to know that Deborah Gordon-Benton, comes from a lineage of people, of Black folks, of African folks who were smart, industrious, have a lot of heart, are generous people, people of faith, and people who believe in a better future for our people. And I'm one of those folks willing to do the work to ensure that that happens.
Deborah Benton, I am so proud of you. I love
Okay.
you and your husband and your daughter. You guys have done an amazing job. I can't wait to get her on
Oh yeah, that's
because
good.
she is Black history. And we're going to do this again. Have a blessed day and thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, and God bless you, Tracy.
We extend our heartfelt gratitude to each viewer who has joined us on this journey through your history. Suppose you have found inspiration, insight, and connection in the stories shared by our remarkable guests. In that case, we invite you to consider supporting the continuation of community programming like this through a donation. Your contribution will help us amplify diverse voices, celebrate rich histories, and foster meaningful dialogue that uplifts and unites us all. We also extend a special thank you to our sponsors, whose generous support has made this series possible. May Your History continue to resonate in your hearts and minds, inspiring you to embrace the beauty of diversity and the power of unity. Thank you for being a part of this transformative journey, and we look forward to welcoming you back for more engaging and enlightening content in the future. Don't forget to like and share this video, subscribe to this channel, and give God the glory.